Welcome to my channel. In this channel, I want to connect you with local businesses in Arizona. We want to get to know the local businesses, what they do, who they are, and the story behind their journey. We also want to find out the way to support their businesses as well, and also support our community. Today, I have the privilege to have Sarah Zocolo on the show. She is the Assistant Vice President and the branch manager for security title. Let's welcome Sarah to the show. Hey, Sarah, welcome to the show. How are
Hello. I'm good. How are you?
you? Good, good. Why don't you introduce yourself for the people who don't know who you are, what you do?
Sure. So I'm Sarah Zocolo. I'm an assistant vice president and branch manager at Security Title Agency. My branch, we're in Chandler, Arizona, right by the Chandler Fashion Mall. I have been in real estate for almost 12 years, but I've been in escrow and title world for about six. I was actually a real estate agent and then a associate broker before I got into escrow, and I kind of found my home here. And yeah, I love being able to be the referee and being able to help not just referee the agents and lenders, but also help guide the buyers and sellers towards closing because we do this every day, but they don't. So that's always the fun part of it is helping get everyone to the finish line.
Yes. And I'm sure the audience look at you like she looked like 12. Maybe she's
Thank
doing
you. No, but
maybe.
I've just been doing it from the get-go, kind of. So I
Yeah.
grew up in it. All my family and everyone was in real estate growing up. So it just was a natural transition for me too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I know we've been working together for many years. And when I first met you, I'm like, my
Yeah.
gosh, she's so young, but she's been in real estate for so long.
Hey, we have been conquering the world for years together now.
Yes. I love security title with all the stuff that you do for us with you always go above and beyond. So I really appreciate that.
Well, of course, that's what we're here for. We're here to make you guys look good and make your buyers and sellers actually want to refer people back to you. So
Yes, of
that's how
course.
we help.
And that's what this channel is about. We're here to support each other, right? Because I'm always the front end of the transactions. So you make
Hmm.
me look good, but nobody knows
Yes,
behind the scene. You
we are a team.
scene, yeah. So today I want to focus on relocation because,
Mhm.
with Arizona growing, we see a lot of people moving from Midwest, California. Even we have a client from Oregon, Michigan. I mean, there's so many different places that come migrate into Arizona. So can you walk us through the process of title works, and is there anything that the people who relocating need to know?
Yeah, so escrow is a little different in every state, but something that is particular is that we're not an attorney state. So when you have a lot of people, buyers or sellers that are from back east or the east side of the US, they're used to attorneys being involved. That's kind of our position. So we're not licensed in Arizona, but that is the role that we take on is the same as what attorneys do in other states. So it's all built into one as well. So we are title and escrow in Arizona. It's not separate companies or separate people that you have to talk to. That is one thing with myself that I'm a one contact person. I have a team behind me, but for me to best support my agents and be a part of your team is that just me. Call me. We walk everyone through everything. The title reports, they look a little bit different everywhere, but they're very similar. Of That's the checklist that we as the escrow company use to make sure that we can convey title clearly and correctly to the buyer. So we don't have any liens left over, judgments, payoffs from the sellers, all of their laundry list of things we pay and take care of at closing. And so that's where we jump in for the out of state people is we let them know usually within the first week of if there are any issues or if we're good to go or there's nothing that they need to worry on their end to get to us. We just keep working on the back end to take care of our things. The importance of that title search and that title report, because we don't just search the property address, we actually search the seller's names. So sometimes it'll come up that there is a few judgments that come up on title and the seller goes, that's not me. I don't want the buyers to think, I have child support liens or I have all these credit cards that I owe people that it feels embarrassing of maybe I don't have my life together. Now everybody sees it. Sometimes it's an issue of if your name is John Smith, there's going to be another John Smith in our search of the entire county and state for judgments or liens or making sure that you don't owe anybody. So sometimes we'll get some more follow-up information and then clear it for everybody. And if we can't clear it, then we pay it. And we take that off the seller's plate in the future, I guess. But that way we can keep everyone in communication of, are there going to be any roadblocks?
Mhm.
Is the buyer going through a divorce, especially if they're going through a divorce out of state? That spouse is still required to sign documents in Arizona. Arizona, well, we are an escrow state where we don't deal with attorneys. We're also what's called a community property state. So if you're married, it's 50-50. If you were married in South Africa, if you were married in London, if you're married in the US, if you have a legal spouse somewhere in the world, you have a legal spouse in Arizona. So even through a divorce process, we do deal with that sometimes where they say, oh, well, we're legally separated. Well, you're not legally divorced. They are still your spouse. So sometimes when we do the title search and we find that information out, that's when we can communicate and again help be that referee to get everything done on time for closing, to track down a spouse, be that therapist to whoever we need to be with, or be that help with an attorney's office to pay a judgment lien off, to get the seller in front of them to negotiate for payments and things like that, or we just cover it at closing. We really are the not just the investigators, I guess you could say, but truly the referees of putting up the yellow cards or putting up the green cards of we're good to go on this, we're not good on this. There's problems with the HOA because we handle that as well. So just continually keeping everyone in the loop and also making sure that everyone's moving forward and knowing what's going on is the
Mhm.
big thing. That it's not an issue with the seller. I'm only going to talk to the seller over here about it. Everyone's going to know the whole way through. Just because, especially when you're out of state and relocating, you're not here.
Mhm.
You couldn't just walk into my office and with a printout of the report and say, can we walk through this? So in open communication and in the escrow company moving forward and communicating with the agents back to the buyers and sellers or communicating with them all together, it really helps take away that stress when people are out of state or sometimes out of the country is what we deal with a lot as well.
Yeah. So, like in every family gonna have a different situations, all right? And then
Mhm.
this is where we dig
Mhm.
into the paperwork and then we find out. But like, what if, there's a transitions where they had to sell the homes and then they want to
Mhm.
buy a home in a contingency and close all at once. And the property is want to be on the same title, out state.
Mhm.
Is there any process in that delay the transactions or anything challenging that you can share?
Yeah, so I mean, the main thing and kind of what my mantra is if I'm not told, I don't know. So open communication at all times. And even if it's day one, we're calling the buyer to talk about earnest money. We do call and ask when we talk to them and do our opening conversation. It's, are you selling a home? Are you going to be paying for this home with that home? Because if we communicate at the beginning, then it's super smooth through the end. The worst thing in the world is we're at closing day and I'm
Mhm.
calling a seller to triple check their wire information. And then they say, yeah, I need you to send me the money today because then I have to resend it to this other title company today too. Well, that's just not how wires work. So I can usually get a wire at the same day, but if it's going to your mine of regular checking and savings accounts,
Mhm.
especially if it's for even more than $50,000, and we can be working from 50,000 up to hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're sending out at once, your bank's going to hang on to it. So if you think that you're going to be able to get the money over from me to you and you to them, it's never going to happen the same day. So that's why, and this happens all the time and we're used to it, but I just need to know who the other title company is because, again, we do this every day. So it's a quick phone call. We can communicate. We can give each other our account information, and we can actually take that entire thing off a seller or a buyer's plate and just handling it directly. We can have that other title company if they're selling a home in Ohio and we're closing in Arizona the same day. We are lucky that we're on the West Coast because banks go off of East Coast time. So we usually have more time if the money is coming from the East Coast back to us at the West Coast. They can close earlier in our time. They can get us the funds and everything, and then we can keep moving on our end. It's earlier in the day. When we have sellers who are moving back east, which that happens too with snowbirds, especially
Mhm.
this time of year is when they sell because they're all going back home for the summer because they don't want to be in our summer. When we send them the money and it's closing same day, it's super important that we know ahead of time because on the flip side, if I'm opening 2 or 3 hours later than what that title company is in New York, we've now lost all that time for me to be able to get the money out to them and then still record and transfer ownership on your new purchase. So that's why we always ask day one to try and avoid that stress. Because now, as a seller, your home in Arizona just sold, but I don't have a home now. I'm homeless for at least a day until the wire magically and the money magically appears on the East Coast the next day, and then they still have to do their process of transferring ownership. So we have had that happen sometimes where it's literally down to minutes and then calling our accounting department and saying, call the bank, push the wire to try and get keys. And the reality is sometimes we miss it. And that's just due to, again, if I'm not told, I don't know. And trying to be that point of contact and referee from day one helps make people feel comfortable. And then conversations on the phone, sometimes it just slips out of them. And I go, oh, I'm not giving you that money. I need to give somebody else that money. And getting that coordinated pretty quickly. So once we find out, as long as it's early enough in the day, we can always make something work. But it doesn't mean it's not going to be stress less.
We've been through so many transactions and sometimes but the close
Yeah.
is beautiful, they're getting the key, they're smiling, but no
Yeah.
but behind the scene. So that's why, I always like to get to know my clients and we have the
Mhm.
consultations, whether the seller consultations or the buyer consultations. That's where we really get personal into like,
Exactly.
yeah, what's going on? What's happening? What's you planning? Because
Mhm.
it's not like we want to know their life story and their personal, but it just is help when the crucial timeline come in place.
Exactly, exactly. And that's usually when we talk to people, money is always kind of a stigma in conversations. And it's always something where people are embarrassed to talk about it or they don't want you to know their business. But as an escrow company, I work as a neutral third party in the transaction. So that's what I always joke. I'm like, I have my own roof and home over my head. I don't care what your situation is. My goal is to get it done correctly for you, is to get your money where it needs to be. If your money needs to be in your next house, then we need to get it there. Whatever your new loan is, whatever your closing cost is, whatever you can afford. So you didn't get as much money out of your sale as you thought, or you got more money and you don't want people to know. We're very confidential. We work as the neutral third party to get everything done correctly and quickly for
Yeah.
you. So everything works as soon as possible for
Yes.
clients and customers.
The timeline is very crucial because sometimes that might be on contract and the rate lock for that loan might be expired.
Mhm.
So it needs to be closed on that day.
Yes.
Sometimes we work like past the closing and all that stuff
Hmm. Oh
as well.
yeah, we've had many buyers that show up from out of state with their entire moving truck in our parking lot, and they're like, "Okay, we're gonna sign."
Yeah.
And then something to point out as well, because it's a little different than back east with out of state buyers, is that in Arizona, signing doesn't mean keys. You have to sign first. We have to have all the money in, and then we transfer title first before keys are passed. And keys are also passed between the agent and the buyers. They're not actually at the title company because we get that question a lot. We don't, as a neutral third party, we don't hold keys.
It's
I
so
can barely find my keys half the time.
It's so different from state to state, even the little detail. And that's why the consultations is so important. We laid out
Exactly.
everything so the expectations is there, and then we just follow the guideline as we go. Yeah.
Hmm.
But what about like foreigner, like Canadian, or even sometimes I have like Vietnamese buyer, like foreigner,
Hmm.
handle those foreign transactions?
So foreign transactions, it's a little more specific. There's a little extra to it. To discuss foreign sellers, if they're truly foreign, they don't work in the US, they don't have a US tax ID number or social security number, they don't pay annual taxes or anything, then they really are considered a foreign seller. If they
Mm-hmm.
have partial or some level of citizenship, but maybe they're not a full US citizen yet, they're
Mm-hmm.
not we don't always view them as a foreign seller. It's really person to person. And again, that's where deeper conversations, more in-depth conversations, very personal conversations have to happen at that point. And the conversation always starts with, I'm not asking these to be rude. I'm asking these so we proceed correctly and again, the most efficient
Mm-hmm.
because we're dealing with different foreign investor tax laws at that point. CPAs get involved and we have a list of certified CPAs that we know can handle foreign sellers. They know
Mm-hmm.
the different tax laws, they know the different tax forms that are needed during and even post closing that we always like to add on to the team and work with. But again, it goes into open communication of if they're foreign, they don't have a US social security number of any kind, they're not considered US citizens, and they're overseas, then we
Yeah.
have to immediately start discussing embassies
Mm-hmm.
because final documents need to be notarized. And
Mm-hmm.
with the way of the world to do a remote online notary or a RON, RON, you have
Mm-hmm.
to have US citizenship 90% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
With almost all services that we use, you have to have some level of citizenship. So if we have someone in Vietnam or overseas anywhere and they don't have a level of citizenship, then there's more research into what's called the Hague Convention, depending on what country they're in, because sometimes there's workarounds, but usually it ends up at making an appointment at a local embassy or consulate office to get the
Mm-hmm.
documents notarized. And that usually takes a few weeks from
Mm-hmm.
when they can get an appointment to when the appointment actually happens, and then getting the originals DHL delivered back to us.
Mm-hmm.
For buyers, it's a little more particular. Usually, if a buyer is foreign, they're paying cash because it's pretty difficult to get a standard loan through a traditional lender without any level of US citizenship or even a tax ID number. So unless we're going through a hard money lender, which even in those cases, it's very rare, it's almost always cash with foreign buyers. And that
Mm-hmm.
becomes the conversation of, again, Arizona is a community property state. And in that, there are documents that need to be notarized to be able to transfer title correctly at closing. So again, what level of citizenship do we have? If they're purchasing in an entity like a trust or an LLC or corporation, then that actually takes away the notary aspect and everything can just be DocuSign and it is the easiest thing in the world. We do a couple extra steps to re-verify their identity. Our company, we're under a Fidelity umbrella, so we actually partner with Clear, like you have at
Mm-hmm.
the airport, to re-verify everyone's identities, not only for our protection, but for the agent's protection as well, just to make sure we're absolutely working with the correct person and preventing any kind of deed fraud, potential title fraud, or any issues like that. I always want to trust who I'm talking to, but in the decade plus I've done this job, you can probably attest that as much as we want to trust everyone as humans, when it comes pen to paper, we're dealing with the largest transaction of people's lives. So we
Mm-hmm.
want to quadruple check that we're dealing with the right person.
Yes, of course. Yeah. When money is involved, that's when a lot of risks
Mhm.
also come. And especially there's a lot of scam arrive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, we've caught a lot of scams. The biggest thing that we deal with that, again, Arizona, like you said at the beginning, is a snowbird state. It's
Mm-hmm.
also a second home for people. So people don't live full time in homes. We deal with a lot of vacant properties
Mm-hmm.
where the home is vacant. We have a lot of vacant land still, even though we've been built up a ton. And even
Mm-hmm.
the last 5, 10 years, we still have a lot of vacant land. And that's where the deed fraud issues come in. So that's where we have to be extra careful. Okay, so the seller doesn't have a mortgage. They own the property, what we call free and clear. There's nobody we have to pay off. They get 100% of the proceeds after closing costs.
Mm-hmm.
That's a red flag. they live out of state. It's a second home. There's nobody living in the property. It's not like we have tenants or something that, we would not have to worry as much about the deed fraud. But there's a lot of extra steps that we go through on our end. Of course, like I said, the clear program that we do that makes them upload a picture and just like at the airport, do a quick picture of your face, of your ID and your face in real time. And we have a couple other ways where we still do a paper letter that we FedEx overnight to a fixed address that should be the seller's based off of records that we have on our back end. And
Mhm.
that's how we still verify that the seller we have. And sometimes the sellers call and they're like, of course I'm selling the home. Why would I be going through all this? And once you have the conversation of like, well, it might not be you. Um,
Mhm.
I know the kind of joke sometimes is with the county, in Maricopa County, it costs $30 to record something. As long
Mhm.
as you have a check for $30 written out to the county recording office and you have a property address or a parcel number somewhere on a piece of paper, you can really record anything. I know that the county is working on changing that, and there are some law changes coming down or rule changes coming down the way for how the county handles that to help prevent deed fraud. But because
Mhm.
it's so rampant in Arizona that, I mean, I've had it before where we had to go. We found out this was a few years ago, there were four fraudulent deeds recorded on title. It was an
Mhm.
older couple that owned this vacant home. They were renting it on and off, but they didn't really do anything with the ownership of it. They just had family friends who would rent it from them or people from their church that they would loan it to.
Mhm.
So they were never really looking at their title on the daily. And they found out that um, somebody was trying to sell the home out from underneath them. And the reason that there were four different deeds recorded is because how far back, they're taking their chances that the escrow officer or the title company reviewing the history of deeds, because that's what we do, wasn't going to look that far. They would look a couple back, see it was good enough. It went between some companies, some LLCs that were valid LLCs,
Mhm.
um, but it would have been hard to track down who the signer of each entity was.
Mhm.
So, but we did, and we went back and back and back and back and back, and we ended up just going back to the last, like, who was the last husband and wife for the last human, not entity deed. And we did quite a bit of sleuthing on Facebook. Like, I was on Facebook trying to find relatives of these people and trying to find their address or a phone number, and people.com trying to find any kind of contact information. And I ended up finding a cousin who goes to the same church that when the grandparents are in town, sometimes they go to. It was a cousin of a tenant that was able to benefit off the charity of these people to stay in the home when that person was down, and got their phone number from that
Wow.
random person that goes to the same church as this couple to confirm that they were not selling the home. And it was devastating to the buyer because they were first time home buyers. It was going to be their first home. They were going to have their first baby in that home. It was in
Mhm.
their price range because these scammers undervalue and underprice their listings to find a quick buyer to get in, get out, get money, and disappear. But they were grateful in the end that we did all that. And it was a few nights actually of sleuthing and deep diving.
The money went through and
Because what
everything.
happens at that point? If the seller finds out and comes back, we can unwind the entire transaction. There's lawsuits at that point. There's potential of the buyer having to move again and get kicked out of the property as we unwind title and ownership back to the sellers. If they say, no, I'm not agreeing to sell it, there's a lot of legal issues that come from that. So that's why we do the legwork up front
Mhm.
so I can sleep at night and know that people aren't going to have their house ripped out from underneath them later down the
Yes.
road. And I don't know, it was quite insane. I'll never forget that transaction. I even know the street address and people's names and everything. So
You have some amazing story. I always love to hear from you because that's how I learn as well, you know. Like with my clients, every time we close the transactions, I always advise them, hey, go to Maricopa County, sign up for
Mhm.
title alert. So at least if anybody doing anything under your name, you get notified right
Mhm.
away. But that's just prevent if something happened. Like I wanted to know a little bit more on like how to prevent it before it's even happened. Because
Mhm.
like in that situations, you know, if that buyer didn't know, she wired the money in and then now the money's gone. I'm sure there's
Mhm.
investigations and things like that to bring the money back, but it
Right.
probably
And
sometimes.
exactly. So for post close, after closing, I know Maricopa County and Pinal County now does it. I think more counties in Arizona are starting to have that alert system where you can
Hmm.
type in your address, you can type in your first and last name, and if anything that matches that gets recorded at the county, like I said, somebody brings $30 in, records a random deed. I believe you get emailed
Hmm.
immediately a picture of it, and they'll also paper mail it to your mailing address that's with the county because it's very hard for scammers to change your
Hmm.
actual mailing address with the tax office. So that's, and then at that point, they have instructions and a number to call. They immediately unrecord it, they put an alert out, things like that. We've had people even call in years down the road where they weren't sure or they received a deed or something like that. They threw the alert and they called
Hmm.
us to say, what do we do? And we're like, well, the county's going to reverse it. But on our end, we can put out what's called a flag alert to,
Hmm.
I email our title underwriting department and they put an alert out on that property and that person's name on our back end as well. So if somebody still tries to come in with a contract or pretending to be that person, it's an immediate red flag and they say, nope, there was fraud, you need to do more investigation before anyone agrees to close this transaction. And then it falls on the escrow officer to do a little bit more digging. And I believe my contact info is put in that alert, so they usually reach out directly to me. Prior,
Yeah.
say like for an example, what you said, we closed, it got missed, something happened, they were too good at it, and it shows up 1, 2, 3, even like not just months, but years down the line of a seller, the rightful owner shows up and says, that was my house. You took
Hmm.
my house from me and I didn't get paid for it. What's issued at closing, and in Arizona, it's actually required as part of the AAR contract that realtors work with, is
Hmm.
that owner's title insurance.
Hmm.
It's required in Arizona. In some other states, which this could be different for people coming from out of state, it's optional. Here,
Hmm.
it's required. It is paid for by the seller at the seller's expense at closing. And it's valid through the life of ownership of the property for the buyers. It's issued in the buyer's name at closing.
Hmm.
So, say 3 months down the road, a person reaches out to us and says, hey, I own 123 Main Street. It looks like it closed. You guys handled the transaction 3 months ago. I did not sell this property. So that makes me want to cry, but I've luckily never had to deal with that yet, just thinking about it. But at that point, we reach out to our title department, we reach out to our administrative department, we reach out to the buyers to see if they've had any contact with this person. Because again, I want to believe everybody, but this person that called in might be fraudulent as well. Sometimes when we deal with estates or people that have passed, sometimes you have we received all the legitimate documents from courts or from a trust
Hmm.
stating who is to sell it, where is it to be paid, and it's all very clear and very verified. Sometimes you have family members that call and pretend
Hmm.
to be XYZ person, pretend to have a will.
Yeah.
Wills in Arizona have to go through probate. We don't address wills at all as part of title. We
Hmm.
don't even recognize them as ownership. In Arizona, it must go through probate at that point. Um, so we have to do our due diligence on our end, one, to verify that it's truly an owner or a rightful owner that should have received proceeds. So let's say that it is. At that point is when that title insurance kicks in. We put a
Hmm.
claim in, and then there's an attorney team and a legal team through the title insurance that will do more investigations, more digging. If people need to be paid, we pay them out. And then we try ourselves to go after the scammers to sue or get money back or do all the litigation on that end. Luckily, I don't have to be. a part of that if, knock on wood, it were to ever happen to me. But that's usually the process where um, I can't speak for every single transaction or time when that happens, but normally money usually makes people okay. So the title insurance is who covers and cuts the loss on paying everyone out, which is why that's so important. We do get that question a lot in signings, especially on the seller side, because it is required. Um, they're regulated rates based off of the purchase price. So it's not a rate that I choose of my liking of I feel like it's this amount. The cost of it is regulated based off of the sales price. Most title and escrow fees are regulated rates. And they ask, it's usually a couple $1,000s sometimes, depending on the sales price. And they're like, well, that's taking up my proceeds. What's the point? And usually what I compare it to is say, because if a seller's in person with me signing, at that point, I have verified enough and trust that they're a legitimate seller. We have caught fake sellers at signings, so that's a different story. But it seems silly, but what's a couple $1,000s at closing to know that God forbid something happens, and now you're looking at a $500,000 minimum lawsuit from the buyers. And instead of you taking that on, we take that on through the
Mhm.
life of the ownership of the buyer's home. As long as they, you know, don't do any drastic title transfers because that's what we're ensuring is the person of record owns the property. So if they change ownership, then it could be an issue at that point that we could address at that time. But
Mhm.
it protects the sellers almost more than it protects the buyers. And I can't speak for the state of Arizona, but in my head that makes sense as to why it's written into our contract that
Mhm.
the seller pays for that title insurance.
Yeah.
And to me, it's worth its weight in gold that no one's going to come back. Like I said, sometimes it's 5 years down the road that I've heard of that a true owner comes back or that true owner passed away and now the beneficiaries or the successors of that person come to find out that that property got sold out from underneath their elderly parent prior to their passing, or even, unfortunately, sometimes at passing. This person
Mhm.
will pass, and sometimes we'll see deed fraud within days of finding out when that person passed away. And it's something I couldn't imagine having to go through. So that's why we work so hard to prevent it from happening
Yeah.
to people. So I think it's worth its weight in gold, and that's not because it's a fee that our company charges. It's not a fee that I get paid, just to be frank. So, but it's a protection.
Yeah, no, it's good to have the protection, especially like, it's not only protecting the buyer, it's also protecting the seller as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. But
Whilst it's issued in the buyer's name, it truly is more of a protection to the seller.
mhm.
Because if a fraudulent seller comes up, yes, it's going to affect the buyer too. But like I said, normally money can be transferred around to make everything okay for the buyer not to be able to have to move out. So it's truly a protection of the seller.
Yeah, I want to circle back a little bit when you mentioned that if that person transfer title or do some changes with the title, in many cases we have out state clients who
Mhm.
not out state but like foreign client like Canadian, they come here, purchase a home, and then they ended up renting it out like an investment property, and they move that title into like an LLC. So would that
Mhm.
affecting the title insurance as well? Can you clarify that a little bit more?
Yeah, it would. It would. So, like I said, your title insurance is protecting, is insuring the owner of record at the time of our transfer.
Mhm.
So, let's say you have John and Jane Smith, husband and wife. When they purchased it as a first-time home buyer, so it's a primary residence. That's what's called a homeowner's policy. So it's the highest coverage. It's the most security. When 5 years down the road happen, the rates drop, they can refinance, they can make it a rental home and move on, take some equity out and move on to their next home. And they want to transfer the property into an LLC because that's usually, I'm not a tax professional, but that's usually what CPAs or tax people advise, just to keep your taxes clean for investment income. That would void your insurance policy because we insured it being your primary residence and your personal names. So when those kind of situations happen, it is up to the owner at that point, so the buyers in our case, when they switch it to an LLC, they could reach out to a title company. There are costs to it to get new title insurance. It's a very case by case basis with renewing title insurance or seeing if you need to pay for a brand new policy. Can we amend your current policy that we closed with? Can we re-endorse it, is what it's
Mhm.
called. Sometimes when we have families where they are purchasing as their primary residence, it's their first major investment, and in closing, we find out that they're going to set up a trust later
Mhm.
on. In Arizona, like I said, with the wills not counting, trusts don't count either unless you transfer the ownership from the trust, from your personal names to the trust. So the thing to always remember, if it's not recorded, it doesn't count in Arizona. So when they do that, or if they let us know, we can actually pre-endorse their policy to add a trust. LLCs are
Mhm.
a little bit different because the idea is it's an investment property at that point. So if you're buying it as your investment property, we'll have that conversation just like we will if it's your primary into a trust of, are you going to move it into an LLC later? Are you going to move it into a trust later? Okay, let's give you the right policy now so that way it's an easy fix later.
Mhm.
Again, we are a business, but I'm not in the business of having to make people buy a brand new policy every 3 years when their life changes. So if we can do a cheaper or more cost-effective solution through that communication prior to closing and kind of the standard questions that myself and my team always ask to pull that
Mhm.
information out of the buyers and sellers, because sometimes, again, they don't do this every day, so they don't think to tell us until we ask.
Yes.
And I don't know unless I'm told. So we can always pre-plan, as it doesn't matter how busy myself or my team are in asking those questions, it gives the best experience and it helps save people money in the long run.
Yes.
Obviously, 6 years down the road, suddenly they decide to make these changes. They're not going to have told me that prior to closing. So we'll have a separate conversation at that point. But there's always a fix to things. You know,
Mhm.
my mantra to my team is as long as we have all of our funds in still, everything is fixable. Everything's figure outable. Everything, there's a lot of sources that we have with our company and with through Fidelity to get answers to those hard questions. I mean, you and I have dealt with some
Mhm.
foreign situations sometimes with a foreign buyer or seller that takes a little extra work, but it's worth its weight in gold and taking that time together and working as a team with your clients and customers to close correctly. So that way
Mhm.
it's not a stress. They call you or call me 3 years down the road and they're like, oh, well, this wasn't my intention at all with the home, or I was going to make it a rental, or it was supposed to be my primary. You
Yeah.
gave me investor type title insurance, but I needed the primary owner title insurance. There's a lot of differences in the coverages, which is a little too in depth to get into in one call of those differences, but it's just always having the conversations and the importance of the agents having the knowledge to give me to ahead of time to do those
Mhm.
consultations and lay it all out on the table so that way we can give them the best experience, the best protections, and the best coverage. Because I tell every signing this, whether it's your first home or it's your 100th home, this is still a really big deal. It's still a
Mhm.
huge transaction and it's still a huge accomplishment, whether you're buying or selling. And no matter the situation that you're selling or buying in, it's a huge accomplishment. So we take that extremely seriously and we need to handle that
Mhm.
properly as well.
Yeah, but that's why, having a backup, like a team to back you up is very important. And then
Mhm.
people misleading real estate agents at just transactions. Technically, our relationships start when the transactions is closed because that's
Right.
so much go beyond closing, and then we
Mhm.
want to be the source of the source to bring the right solutions to to our client's problem. So I always constantly follow up with our client to see if there's any changes. Are they moving on to the second home? Are they renting this out? How can you protect your money? Because, building asset, it take a while, and ruining it, it's really fast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, things are quick to disappear. As hard as they are to get it, things can disappear very quickly.
Exactly. But I do want to circle back to the wire fraud because I don't think we touched base on that. I know we touched base quite a bit on the title fraud, which that's a
Hmm.
big subject. But what about wire fraud? Like, what can
Hmm.
people prevent from wire fraud? Because normally I would tell my client, you will never get a wire instruction from me. And when you get something, you pick
Right.
up the phone and you call. But with your experience, is any other tip beside that they can prevent wire fraud?
Well, so we do have options we do have people who are just terrified of it. They're too afraid, and I totally understand that. So
Mhm.
sometimes we can accept a cashier's check. With good fund laws in Arizona, we do have to receive those prior to the closing date. So sometimes that takes a little bit of pre-planning to get the cashier's check in before the closing date to just circumvent the wire completely for a buyer.
Mhm.
Otherwise, the biggest thing is we press them from the very first phone call to buyers and sellers. Call, call, call. If I'm not on the phone with you, emailing you the instructions or faxing or securely sending our wire instructions whilst I'm still on the phone with you, it's not from me. You should
Mhm.
never receive it from your lender, should never receive it from your agent. The only person that's getting money to or from is escrow. That's the
Mhm.
only people that you should be providing instructions to if you're a seller for where proceeds go to. And that's the only person that you should be getting instructions to send money to. You don't send it to the lender, you don't send it to the agent, so you should not be getting instructions from them. And even if you have the instructions, you still need to call. You need to call and re-verify. We get it all the time where, especially with the earnest money, the very first deposit on day one of the contract, where a buyer will call back 5, 6, 7 times because they're setting their wire transfer up with their bank online. And we do recommend if you're having a hard time online, make the effort and just drive to a local branch and they'll help
Mhm.
walk you through it of your bank. And your bank can walk you through it, or you can call your bank and do it. Put the liability back on your bank if you're nervous about it. But we have no problem. By the seventh call, they're like, it's me again. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. There's no apology needed. Again, we do this every day. I have sent hundreds of thousands of wires at this point in my career. I'm used to it, but I still triple check everything. My team, we all, there's levels of how we do our wires to send money out to people, but for a buyer to send money wire in, who wires on a daily basis? Do you know what I mean? There's hardly anybody that has done it before they get to
Mhm.
this process and this transaction. So we are happy to walk them through it. Sometimes, we'll sit on the phone in silence as they're typing things in, and then I'm like, okay, read it back to me. Okay, I'm going to read you it on my end. Now you follow back with your finger, and I'm going to do the same. Like, I would rather do that 20
Mhm.
times back and forth with a buyer to know it's done right. Because
Yeah.
with wire transfers, once it's sent, it's gone. It
Mhm.
is impossible pretty much to get money back. There's
Yeah.
some very, very, very few instances that we've been able to claw back some funds. And again, I'm very grateful that I've never had to actually have this happen to someone that I've worked with, but I've seen it happen and I've heard about things that have happened. And it's once it's sent, it's gone. It's a one-way street with
Mhm.
wires. So it sounds silly, but just call us. That's why we call the very first day as an introduction. We tell them to save our phone number. This is the only office line that will call you about wire transfers. If anybody else calls you, you hang up and you call this number back. Save it as security title. You'll only need it for until we close. Maybe delete it a couple days after we close because the joke is if I do my job right, you'll never hear from me after I say congratulations, we're recorded. But that means that everything's been done correctly. So
Yeah.
it's a
Exactly.
short time to keep an extra contact in your phone, save it. Sometimes, as the agent, I know you are good about it of giving them my phone number ahead of time and saying, this is the only number There will
Hmm.
not be another phone number that calls you. There will not be another person that sends you these instructions. And
Yes.
like I said, we do it over the phone of nope, just keep refreshing your Gmail until it comes in. Keep refreshing. And we send it through a secured portal. They have to
Yes.
make a login. It's attached to their email. It's attached to their phone number only. It's sometimes a bit of a pain buyers feel to be able to do all that, but it's all under the understanding of we're doing that to protect their money.
Hmm.
And because I don't have an extra $300,000 to pay somebody back. So
Are you sure?
no, not quite. But, we do all these steps to make it secure. We want everyone, we're not doing it to inconvenience people. We're doing it to make sure that they know their money is secure with us, that they
Hmm.
can trust us, that we are taking all these extra steps. We're bugging them with phone calls at the beginning. We're making them create logins to a secured portal. We're doing all that with the intention of this is the biggest transaction of your life. Whether it's
Yes.
your first or your 100th home, this is
Hmm.
a huge amount of money and a huge transaction. And I have said that to people who are buying vacant land for, I think the smallest sales price I've done is like $1,500
Hmm.
of the sales price. I'm like, this is still a huge amount of money to
Yeah.
someone. I take that very seriously from $15 million homes to $1,500 pieces of land
Hmm.
outside of Yuma. That's still important to me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take that seriously. And sorry for the inconvenience sometimes of how secured we make it, how maybe hoops you have to go through to get the instructions, but that's because if you get a random email that looks like it's from me or you or their lender, that's just a quick email like, hey, really quick, our instructions change, we switch banks, here's the new info. It would never come through that way. We
Hmm.
forcibly make you jump through hoops so that way you know that this is the information.
Yeah. But I would rather we take a little bit extra time and make sure it's done right. And
Mm-hmm.
imagine the majority of my clients don't speak the language, so they're even
Mm-hmm.
more terrified. So
Exactly.
client would speaking language buying the house the first time, or even they don't speak English. I mean, we treat them all the same. It's the same process. But that's why on the closing week is the crucial week where I told my team, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to focus on this because sometimes I have to help them go to the bank. And, I have to
Mm-hmm.
be with them, not like communicating, I mean, doing things for them, but like help them
That
communicate.
security.
Yeah, the security, because they already trust me and guide them to the finish line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you do a great job with that. You are
Thank
really great, I will say, at taking care and walking your agents through the process so that way they're confident. By the time they get to the signing appointment where you guys come into my office and we sign everything, they're
you.
nothing but excited. There's
Yes.
no, sometimes people come in and they look like they want to throw up. And by the end of it, my goal is that they have a list. Sometimes I have to go grab an extra piece of paper and be like, okay, write this down, write this down. These are the important dates. This is what you need to do next. But you're very good at your clients, they already know all the next steps because you have already told them twice what it is.
Because that's where the consultations come in, that we set out all the expectations. And then by the time we get to you closing, we're just all celebrating and have fun.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The fun stuff.
Yep.
And
So,
we'll keep all the stress behind the scenes and they
yes.
just get to see the balloons and the celebration.
Hey, that's why I have happy hour with Sarah, with Alex all the time, because I needed that after closing.
Mhm.
So good information, Sarah. I want to keep you forever, but I know you got.
Well, you're mine forever. So,
So, how can we support you, and how can we connect with you?
yeah. So, I mean, I am on Facebook and on Instagram. It's just my first name and last name. So it's Sarah Zocolo, but it's spelled Zocolo. So it's Zocolo. Um, I'm not a big poster, but I am an avid liker and follower and supporter of everything. My office, like I said, I'm in Chandler, Arizona, but we can handle any transaction as long as it's in Arizona, we can handle it. We work all counties, all types of transactions. I do residential and commercial transactions. We do vacant land, whatever's needed, we're here to help because I would never want to make someone feel like they're not important enough to be able to work with me or make someone feel like their transaction or their escrow is too small.
Hmm.
My phone number, I'll give you our office line. I'm happy to share it. It's 480-722-1669. If I'm not free, my amazing team, they'll always answer. And if they're not free or they don't know the answer, they're actually very, very good. And I'm proud of them of saying, I don't know. And Sarah will call you back. And if I don't know, because I am the first, you know this, to say, let me find the answer because again, I have the support in the company that I work at. We are kind of independent branches, but we have such a great support system behind us with security title and with Fidelity backing us that I can, you know this, I can always find the answer and
Mhm.
find a solution or not a workaround, but we can always figure out how to make everything work for everybody. So you can find me.
That's awesome. So, you forgot to mention how we can support you because with all the
Oh,
agents,
send me your escrows, any transactions, we can do
yes,
them.
we
I'm just
always,
here to support you, and I always know that with karma, things come back to me. So,
yes,
I just
we,
enjoy what I do. I enjoy helping getting people to that most exciting moment. And even though I don't do the keys,
yeah,
seeing them sign and seeing that relief and that next chapter closing and the new chapter opening and everything is just it fills my cup up
that's,
daily.
yeah.
Yes,
So
but
this
yes,
is the
send me your contracts, send me your questions.
easiest way for me to explain to my client why you're on my page 3 of the contract.
Yes, because I make it smooth and I help support you so you can make it smooth for them
Yes. Thank you.
and protect them.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to see you again.
Yes, we'll have to get together soon.
Yeah. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.